Thank you for joining today's webinar. I hope you're all having a great afternoon. My name is Kelly Hamilton. I'm the Principal of Strategic Marketing here at Exaion, and I'll be your moderator today. We understand that a lot of companies struggle to transition their operations as they try to maximize their data. How do you truly understand where you currently are, and better yet, how do you get to your desired future state? That's why I'm excited to present today's webinar, 30 minutes to create your playbook to become a data company using the Agile Data Maturity Model. Before we get started, I want to go over a few items. First, we encourage and welcome all your questions throughout the webinar. To ask a question, all you need to do is simply type your question into the question window on your GoToWebinar control panel and hit submit. We'll answer as many questions as possible at the end of the main presentation in the Q&A section. Secondly, we're recording today's webinar and we'll post it on the Exaion website later today. We'll send you an email once it's live in case you want to watch it again or forward this along to your colleague. With that, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker. Vikas Arya is the Principal of Strategy for Exaion. Vikas has spent nearly 2 decades helping government and commercial organizations plan and execute their business and technology strategies. He's also led the creation of the Agile Data Maturity Model, which we call ADMM, to help companies address the disconnect between executives' vision for how their company utilizes data and their daily operations. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to you, Vikas.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. And thanks to everyone for sharing part of your day with me. So during our time together today, I'd like to share with you some of the experiences and interactions that we've had with our clients that really led our team to believe that there is a need for the ADMM. I hope that you will find the information that we present helpful in becoming better data stewards and owners and maximizing your information assets. And we've got a very simple agenda today. So first we'll define what a data company is and some of the common challenges that we've seen in becoming one. We'll also explore the core components of the ADMM so that you are able to clearly see the stepwise logical approach for building capabilities that are requisite of a data company. Then after that, I will share with you a real-world example of how our clients have used the ADMM to create their own playbook and guide them along their unique journey to becoming a data company. And then finally, we'll close with sharing some resources that our team has created to help you begin your own journey of transforming your organization into a data company. So recently our team simply asked a number of executives whether their organizations operated like a data company, and what we found was that 68%, or more than 2/3 of those respondents, believed that indeed their organizations operate like a data company. But when we asked about their tactical operations, we found that only 25% of those same companies actually operated like a data company. So repeating the survey with organizations of varying sizes and across different industries, we found this to be a common gap, and this gap between executives' vision of how their company leverages data and information assets and how that organization actually uses those same assets to support operations and gain competitive advantage. So this common gap between aspirational vision and tactical operation is what led our team to really think about how we could help organizations close that gap. And ultimately, this was the genesis for the ADMM. So exactly what is a data company? So many times you'll hear people say that data companies are good at monetizing their information assets. And while this is important, monetizing data is really one of 3 core characteristics of a data company. In a data company, every person also can access data assets when they need them to make better decisions. And data companies have automated mature processes that leverage data assets to continuously monitor and measure the pulse of business. So these other 2 characteristics are very important in order for companies to be able to monetize their data assets. But more importantly, in order for those organizations to successfully pivot in a rapidly changing business environment. And we see a lot of that in industries like healthcare today. So what you're seeing here on the screen is a visual representation of the Agile Data Maturity Model. So think of this graphic as a capability map. And what you're seeing here is you're seeing all of the functions required of being a data company. And along the X and Y axes, you can see 6 dimensions. And each of these dimensions has a set of associated capabilities. And so recognizing that you certainly cannot run before you walk, we categorize these capabilities as foundational, intermediate, or advanced, so that when it comes time to actually implement these functions or these capabilities, there's a certain logic, and these capabilities will ultimately build upon each other. So this stepwise logical approach for developing capabilities is necessary to ensure that organizations have built the foundational capabilities, such as governance, before implementing more advanced functions like big data and infonomics. This approach is also helpful in making a strong business case for investments in those technologies that support those more advanced capabilities. So in the interest of time, I'll describe just a sample of the capabilities that we've defined and that are associated with each of our 6 dimensions. And as we talk about each dimension and some of the capabilities, think about how your organization operates in each area. So let's take a look at governance first. And keep in mind that there are other capabilities associated with this dimension that you would assess during stakeholder interviews. And governance means empowering everyone across the enterprise and maximizing the intelligent use of data that is consistent, accurate, complete, and secure. And so some examples of foundational capabilities include a cross-functional group of data stewards and owners. And this council is accountable for establishing standard policies across the enterprise, such as information compliance standards, which is another example of a foundational capability. And what we often hear from organizations that do not do governance well and ultimately lack these capabilities and others is that they have multiple silos of data. They have inconsistent naming standards, and they really cannot identify a single source of truth. Some of the intermediate capabilities include having established standards for using APIs to exchange data, as well as for securing sensitive data against unauthorized access. So we defined our next dimension is information management, which we define as enabling the development of an enterprise-wide comprehensive and efficient data architecture, access, and flow management ecosystem. Information lifecycle management is a foundational capability, and it includes sharing and interoperability and data as a service specifications, as well as information terminology, ontology, and service. Another foundational capability includes the existence of conceptual, logical, and physical models and standards. And some of the intermediate capabilities, they include having an enterprise data dictionary and operational data stores, as well as mature data operations, which include policies and processes for access, discovery, and transformation of information assets. And then finally, data lineage is an advanced capability, and what this requires is having mature policies and procedures to track the history of how data is moving between systems and across your enterprise. So now let's talk about organization. So strategy as a foundational capability means identifying, establishing, and socializing a data strategy that supports business goals and has buy-in from senior leadership. Establishing the culture, and culture is an intermediate capability of a data company, is usually the most difficult change, and it's also the most important indicator of success. So as an intermediate capability, this requires identifying, developing, and sponsoring an enterprise data and knowledge management culture, including a well-defined service delivery structure, which is a good segue into the advanced capability, which is service delivery structure. And that means that your organization can identify, develop, socialize, and advocate quality assurance policies and processes that are integrated and monitored across all business portfolios. And that is to measure data access and transparency. So I just want to remind everyone that, again, as we go through each one of these dimensions, what you're seeing here are, sample capabilities for each dimension, and there's certainly others that would be assessed as we were working with clients. So quality engineering. What this means is making data consistent, accurate, and complete, improving data quality, reliability, and security. Auditing and change management are foundational capabilities supported by enterprise reports. We can continuously monitor, report and analyze, and update auditing and change management processes as needed. And then organizations that have developed the intermediate capability of quality assurance have processes in place that are actively integrated and monitored across all business portfolios to measure data quality and timeliness. By developing infrastructure, data companies reap the benefits from having integrated, transparent, and automated data access and reporting. A starting point for developing this dimension are the creation of methods and processes that align business requirements with data architecture, as well as standards and policies that are managed and enforced across all corporate initiatives. Organizations that have developed the intermediate capability of data automation means that they have mature, documented processes that improve data timing, accuracy, and control. And finally, as an advanced capability, data virtualization requires design, development, documentation, and implementation of virtual environments for data storage. So today, we hear a lot about organizations wanting to develop, the sixth and final dimension, which is analytics. And here in analytics within the ADMM means enabling the development of proactive and actionable insights by leveraging large volumes of structured and unstructured data. So as a foundational capability, standard and ad hoc reporting require developing comprehensive business requirements for specific use cases and defining standardized data queries for ad hoc analyses and reports that are based on a common data warehouse or a data source with one version of the truth. So if you remember when we were talking about governance earlier, we were talking about organizations who do not do data governance well have these issues with having a single source of truth. They don't have one, or they have silos of data. So what you're starting to see here is that you have some capabilities within analytics that have a dependency on building or having a mature data governance program in place. So this is what I was talking about earlier about, you have to be able to do some foundational things first before you can do some of the more, advanced sort of, cool things like analytics. So the capability to do predictive analytics, so this is an intermediate capability, requires organizations to assemble and recruit dedicated data scientists, statisticians, and others who can deliver predictive and prescriptive analytic insights across the enterprise. And finally, as an advanced capability, infonomics means that your organization is able to monetize information just as any other corporate asset. And infonomics is an interesting topic, that we've been, exploring and studying, even with our own teams. And, probably here in the next month or two, we'll probably have a webinar just on that topic, because there is a growing interest in, in the market around infonomics and how to really put a value on your information assets. So now I want to share with you a real world example of how to create a playbook specific to your organization's data journey. The first step in creating a realistic action plan is identifying gaps in your current data capabilities. So our team developed a brief survey that asks a series of questions and provides an initial assessment of how executives think about their organization's data capabilities and where they believe gaps might exist. So we help organizations visualize which capabilities are either weak or non-existent and therefore require further assessment. And, I encourage everybody on the webinar to go online and take the survey. You can find it at www.exaion.com/ADMM. So in this example, the person taking the survey indicated that their organization does not have a systematic approach to data governance. And we're going to use data governance in this example because, again, it's one of those, foundational things that you have to build. And what we've seen a lot, with our clients is that's usually one area that companies, for whatever reason, seem to neglect when they're sort of, building out, their data capabilities. What we see a lot is, organizations will sort of, go out and buy, the latest and greatest technology, and then thinking they can simply sort of flip a switch and it's going to work. But governance is one of those sort of, I was kind of equated to kind of the foundation of a house. You have to have it in place before you can start doing some of the more advanced things. So what you're seeing here is, this respondent has said, is data key to your corporate strategic plan? Well, not now, but in the near future, in about a year, it will be. So the fact that they don't have a systematic approach to data governance right away would indicate that that's an area that needs to be further assessed. So after taking the survey, so again, here's an example of what you'll get in real time. So this is what it's telling you. This is an initial assessment of how mature your data capabilities are across all of the focus areas in the survey. And what we also have is, and again, when you take the survey, if you choose to provide us with your email address, then what you see on the screen here is what we would be able to provide you. And what you're seeing here is a more detailed assessment for each focus area in that survey. And what this does is, it helps our team and also your team better understand how mature your data operations are in each of these focus areas and which areas we may want to drill into a little bit further. So again, continuing with our example, so you can see which dimensions, this organization scored poorly in. So you got a scale of, 0, 1, 2, 3, 1 being the lowest score and then 3 being the highest. And again, you can see in about 4 from the bottom, you can see data governance was certainly an area that they scored weakly in. So that would, again, as I said, be an area that we would want to explore further with them. And of course, you want to keep this in mind when interviewing key stakeholders about how well the organization operationalizes its information assets. Because one of the interesting things we find is that, a lot of times the flash survey, it's 15 questions, it doesn't take a long time. Generally, we have, a lot of, sort of more senior folks in organizations take that survey. And what happens is it's interesting because their responses, you can see them, how they scored their own organization. But what we find interesting is when we start speaking with stakeholders who are sort of at a more tactical level or at the more operational level, we can really kind of start to see kind of where executives think their organization is and really, where it is in terms of operations. That's always interesting. So moving on from the flash survey. So again, the focus here is data governance. So the next step would be, to interview a cross-functional group of stakeholders. And again, we're going to focus on data governance. And what we do is ask a series of questions to assess data operations in the context of people, which encompasses culture, communication, training, and skills, processes, which are methods, policies, and procedures, and finally technology, which is data, applications, and supporting infrastructure. And, I always kind of like to think of these sort of 3 things as kind of the 3 main pillars of any operation for any company. And so what you can see here is, so we've gone through we've talked to stakeholders, we've sort of found out what they think is working well and what requirements the organization isn't meeting. And so what you can see here is that this organization has several gaps across various capabilities. In fact, all the capabilities we've listed here for data governance. And what would result from this activity is a formal gap assessment and a detailed remediation plan. So again, if you look at the people area, we talk here about does your organization have a council of data stewards and owners? In the process area, we ask about data architecture, whether it has the appropriate sort of supporting models in terms of quality controls. And then finally, in the technology area, we ask, does this organization have a single enterprise level business and data entity repository, such as a data catalog? So these are, some of the types of questions that we would ask, various stakeholders. And so keeping in mind, this is, a very simple depiction of some remediation steps. But again, in the interest of time, we've sort of just focused on, the specific questions that we asked. And so keeping in mind the gaps that we just shared with you in the previous slide. So here are some examples of some remediation activities. And again, we've got the activities listed here, but certainly there is a whole toolbox of different templates and processes and documents that support this, the actual implementation of these of the remediation plan. So our team has developed several resources to help you better understand how the ADMM could benefit your organization. So again, as I said earlier, we invite you to take our brief 15-question survey, and you'll receive an initial assessment of how mature your data operations are. Following this webinar, our team will email the link to this survey directly to you. And you're also welcome to read some of our team's recent thoughts on this topic. So we've written some blogs. We've also got some other sort of thought leadership materials that we'll be releasing here in the next couple of months. But again, if you're interested in reading these blogs, this is where we explain why organizations today should adopt this model and more details about how it works. And we'll also include links to each of these in our follow-up email, or you can access them by going directly to our website. So with that, I would like to open it up for questions.
Thanks, Vikas. We've gotten a couple great questions and there's still time. So if you have a question, go ahead now and submit it to us through your GoToWebinar control panel. Vikas, our first question came up when you were talking about the organization capability. And it's about legacy work culture is the elephant in the room. Do you have any tips or pointers on how to address that?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I was mentioning, when we were talking about organization, that culture is certainly probably the most it's the hardest thing to change. Whether you're trying to improve your data operations or you're adopting new technology, whatever it might be. But I think what we've found, what's interesting with changing sort of legacy work culture is, one of the most important things. Well, there are a couple of things. I think recruiting champions from different business units or different business portfolios across the organization is very important. Ensuring that you don't have champions which consist just of senior leadership, but you've also got staff members and other folks who represent different parts of the organization is very important. Because what all this sort of ties back to is people always wonder, so what's in it for me, right? And how is this going to affect my job? And am I going to get fired? And is this new data governance tool going to essentially replace what I do? So I think it's important, again, to make sure you've got a solid communication plan in place. But I think recruiting the right folks from different parts of the organization is very important because for any change program, you're going to need champions who can take that message and distribute it across your organization.
Thanks, Vikas. Our next question is more of a comment that I'd like your feedback on. So it's digital data is the currency of infonomics, and this came up during the analytics piece. What are your thoughts on that?
Thoughts on how to use it, or
how to use it, I believe.
Yeah, well, the infonomics thing is interesting because it's a concept that it's fairly new. It's actually one of the things that we looked at when we were kind of in our sort of early stages of developing the ADMM, and what I think is maybe 4 or 5 years ago, infonomics was this concept that there are probably a handful of companies in the world that could actually do that. But I think what's happening now is, given the importance of information assets, right? You're seeing, again, you saw in our survey, right? 68% of the executives that we surveyed said, yeah, we operate like a data company. but they're really not. And I think one of the things that's going to be important, one of the things that will be important moving forward is what I've always found in working with executives is that if you can, the stronger your business case is, the higher chance you're going to have of getting, that support from senior leadership. So when it comes to building out these data capabilities, infonomics is an area that's going to be very important, because if you can ultimately, take your information asset and assign value to it, just as any other corporate asset, when it comes time to making the business case to your executives to say, we need to spend, X millions of dollars to improve our data capabilities, you're going to have a much better shot. Because for executives, that word value is very, very important, and it means different things to different companies. But I think ultimately, as we sort of move into the, into this more of this digital world, I think being able to assign value to your information assets is going to be absolutely important. If you're going to get these sort of projects funded and approved.
Great, thanks. We have one last question. So if anyone else, you have questions, please feel free to ask them. And because our last question, I'm going to paraphrase. It looks like this person uses a variety of different technology products. How do you assess and fit those into this evaluation?
Yeah, I think so. I think the interesting thing with technology is, and I think organizations are getting better at doing this. But I think for those of us who were around management consulting in the 90s or even early 2000s, the classic sort of example was, well, business wants one thing and then IT delivers something else, right? So I think when there are a few things that are important. I think before we even start talking about technology, and this is why in the ADMM we look at people, process, and technology. This is not one of the three. We got to look at all three of them. I think what's important about ensuring that you're investing in the right technologies is first really understanding sort of what does your business look like today, right? And where are those gaps? And once you start to really understand those gaps and the specific requirements associated with them, then it makes sense to go out and start saying, okay, well, technology could probably address these 5 things or these 10 things. But you can only assess technology properly once you understand what the business needs are. But you have to understand that first. And that's built into the ADMM. In fact, with one of our clients, we're doing that now, where we've gone through the formal gap assessment, and we've identified a number of gaps that certainly can be addressed through technology. But now that organization can actually go out and assess different vendors based on their own unique requirements and their own unique gaps, and now they're going to solve them.
Great. Thank you, Vikas, and thank you for everyone who attended today. We really hope this was beneficial as you embark and continue on your data journey. So I'm going to send everyone, as I mentioned earlier, the link to the webinar once it's live, so you can watch this again or share it with your colleagues. We'll also send you the link to the free online assessment and the blogs that were mentioned, in case those were helpful. And Vikas's email is also available if you have additional questions. Please don't hesitate to reach out to him or to me. We'd love to give you pointers and advice. Thank you again for joining, and hope you all have a great day.